Briahna Joy Gray has been having a lot of great conversations on her podcast, Bad Faith. I listened to one with Andrew Sullivan. I listened to one with Thomas Chatterton Williams. She's bringing on people who she disagrees with on a lot of stuff, and they're having substantive conversations, and so it's fun to watch. So I recommend everybody check that podcast out. Now, this is a really great back and forth. It's from a broader... You watch the whole podcast, but she also posted a 20-minute segment on this issue specifically, the issue of defund the police. She's talking to Ben Jealous, the former head of the NAACP, and they get into it over the issue of defund the police and whether or not it's a good slogan and good policy and good politics. So let's go ahead and take a look, and then I'll give you guys my breakdown.
What do we put forward? We put forward that you have a public safety department, not a police department. You have a civilian head, not a law enforcement head. You have two divisions. One is, police officers. One is armed. The other one is social workers. And then over time, you replace about half of the police with social workers through attrition.
But that's just defund. That is defund.
That's a solution.
You don't have to call it.
Half an idea. It's half an idea.
It's not. Then there are.
Come on, it's half an idea. Defund and what?
There are abolitionists who've been writing in detail for decades about what defunding the police actually looks like. And exactly what you're describing is what they're advocating for.
But
now,
again,
if you want to call it something else, I don't really care.
But you should care, is my point.
No.
You should, just like you should care that Dr. King, right, said, let's put Rosa Parks on the bus and not just take anybody who's having a problem on the bus.
Well, no. Here's the thing. I did not bring defund up in this conversation.
I know I did.
You did. So I am very happy moving through the world, avoiding subjects, avoiding language that I think is not going to work for my audience. What I do not do is use my platform to heap on antagonism to phrases that don't matter.
Family, right? This is a family podcast, right? This podcast, I can't imagine like as many, I don't know, Southern like police chiefs listening to your podcast.
No, but there are a lot of libertarians that listen to this podcast. There are a lot of people across the political spectrum because they perceive me to be a fair dealer,
smart,
right?
Incisive,
and the reality
honest,
is,
which is why I'm here. And I'm saying, let's be honest within the broad range of folks. Like criminal justice, I've worked criminal justice reform with all those folks you've mentioned: libertarians, Christian conservatives, fiscal conservatives. In addition to from the left of the left of the left, right? And everybody with a hole for the moderates who tend to be addicted when they're in office to like prison industrial complex money. So I don't mess with them on criminal justice reform because they will tie you up all day long. But all I'm saying is, when you want to abolish something, you got to be able to say like defund and.
Well, the defund movement is doing that, and I hope that next time you are on TV and have the kind of platform that I am not afforded, and someone says defund is a bad slogan, you would suggest to them that poll numbers aren't telling the same story. Joe Biden also got his advocacy for fracking caused support for banning fracking to decline by 20 percentage points. Now, did fracking suddenly become a good idea because Joe Biden was like, fracking is good, and over the course of like 4 or 5 months convinced an additional 20% of Americans that we had to frack? No. But people who are in respected positions of power, spending their time and energy maligning ideas, slogans, whatever it is, will affect poll numbers. And so I'm just unconscious of that, as well as I think I can be honest about the fact that, of course, there are some people who are going to be hesitant about defund. But my job as a communicator, I think, is not to poo-poo the idea or to say that it's not a well-thought-out idea, because it very much is. And the extreme slogan is abolish the police. Defund is the compromise. And Republicans...
That's a distinction without a difference. When you're, a working class Black grandmother at my church in Sandtown, they just simply want to know, like, well, what are you going to replace it with?
And then I would answer, and I would answer.
But it can't be long. It's got to be as short as defund the police.
You just sat here when you were explaining your program at Ithaca, used a lot of words to explain your version of. That's literally all you had to say.
So what we would say is half of modern police work is social work, and therefore half the department should be social workers.
Then that's literally what these defund people are saying, and I have to believe that you know that.
They're talking like academics, not like organizers. I'm an organizer.
But they're not. There's plenty of organizers who are out there who have been doing this work for a really long time.
But what I'm saying is that if you're actually working as an organizer and you're focused on a solution, what you run into is you better start talking about your solution. And so defund the police, and to me, an organizer is somebody who actually gets things. A lot of people who call themselves organizers who only lose, right?
Ben, come on. That is not fair.
Right. When you win, it is fair because there better be a high bar. There's a high bar for me as a young organizer, right? And so, and I want them to win. And I'm working with them every day, and we're actually got something passed that is now moved through. And we got unanimous support. And we got unanimous support by organizing Black folks and white folks and bombarding that city council with common sense. But we had to talk to them about what we were for. And so you can't just talk about what you're against. It's a real simple rhetorical point that you can talk about problem, you better talk about the solution too.
Okay, so there's a lot to say about this. Now, go listen to the whole podcast and definitely listen to the whole debate on defund the police. I don't want to be unfair to Briahna because I only took out, I don't know what that is. That was like a 3 or 4 minute clip from within a 20-minute conversation about defund the police. So I want, her argument should be given justice, and you should see it in its totality in order to come away with a fully formed opinion on it. But so I listened to that whole portion. There's in the overall podcast, there are many portions where Ben Jealous says stuff, and I'm like, sort of cringe a little bit. But in this portion, let's break down what was said. Ben Jealous makes clear by talking about how he actually successfully helped get through this notion in Ithaca, like, take the police budget, let's cut it in half, 50% goes to social work, 50% goes to law enforcement and policing. He's talking about how he succeeded in getting this through, apparently, in Ithaca. And so the reason he's pointing that out is to basically let Briahna know, hey, we're together on the policy of this, on the actual substance of this. And Brianna's response is like, well, that's just defund the police. So there's two separate conversations going on here. One of them is, hey, what's the correct policy? And on the policy stuff, they seem to agree. Roughly, the right solution is to cut police department budgets in half, take that 50%, put it towards social work, take the other 50%, and put it towards actual law enforcement. So if they agree on that policy, then the debate is just over the slogan. And on the issue of the slogan, I don't even think this is a close conversation, because the numbers do speak for themselves. Now, Briahna says at its height, defund the police was like 40% support. Well, I got news for you. 40% is pretty pathetic. Now, what's the support in the most recent poll that I've seen? Now, granted, this is from a year or two ago, but the most recent poll I saw on defund was 18% support. So this is what I don't understand in left circles. What I don't understand is when you have somebody who very clearly is with you on the actual policy substance, and he has tangible results and victories on this exact issue, and he's telling you, hey, your slogan is fucking toxic. Why are we debating? Because I think that what Ben Jealous is pointing out is an objective fact. Because if even at its height it was 40%, and now it's like 18%, why would you want to make the path harder for yourself by holding on to like the least popular slogan of all time? Now, listen, I wasn't married to this stance I currently have, because there is an argument in politics for if you make a maximalist demand, that might drag the Overton window so that the compromise is a more reasonable compromise. So if you sat back from the beginning and watched this unfold, that was a possibility. There was some potential in that. That when you have activists in the street making a maximalist demand of defund the police, then all of a sudden the compromise becomes a lot more left. However, having said that, that is not how it unfolded. In fact, how it unfolded is they made the demand. The demand was viewed as so insane by so many people that support for it went down. And then even support, like post-George Floyd, support for Black Lives Matter was like 80 or 90%. And then the more there were protests and the more that some element of those protests became riots, the more support for Black Lives Matter plummeted. So we took a moment where there was almost unanimous agreement that we need to take some strong action on police reform, and squandered it. Squandered it by embracing a slogan that's easy to tar the left with because it's just not popular, and squandered it by the protests not being led in a true moral and ethical way in the spirit of the civil rights movement, and was sort of like a leaderless anarchic is probably not a word, anarchy-like situation. So there's also something else Bree says. Bree basically makes the argument that the media narrative moved the numbers, which again, that might be true, but if it started at like 40%, then it was never popular to begin with. And the whole goal of doing politics is you have to try to put your best foot forward to get more to get more people on your side. So let me give another example. Imagine if Bernie Sanders, instead of popularizing Medicare for all, he always called it a socialist government takeover of healthcare. Medicare for all wouldn't be polling as high as it is. It wouldn't be whatever, 60, 70%, whatever it is, or whatever it was at its peak. It's still over 50%. But it wouldn't be that. Because you take the slogan which sounds the most appealing to the most people, because that's politics 101. And if he were to do, like, I'm in favor of a total socialist government takeover of healthcare, then all of a sudden the same issue, which could poll at 70%, all of a sudden is polling at 40%. And it's like, why do you want to make your life harder? Why do you want to do it? For some abstract notion of moral purity that is sort of made up and arbitrary? That just strikes me as silly. And also the idea that like defund is the compromise. I don't think your average person understands the difference between abolish and defund. And I don't think they're wrong in feeling like that because not everybody is a hardcore left activist. So look, my overall takeaway is very simple. If we agree that that policy is the most reasonable, like cut police budgets 50%, take 50% put towards social work, take 50% put towards actual law enforcement. By the way, I think that's reasonable. I do. If you believe that that's the case, then you put the smiley face on it and you package it in something that's appealing to get more people on your side. So, look, that's my breakdown of the situation. Now, I will say this. Unfortunately, I get why the left is like sensitive on the issue of defund the police because this is like the one issue that elite media and Democratic leadership always comes back to bash the left over the head with to blame all election losses on this idea of defund the police. That is total bullshit. The idea that like, you know, every left Democrat needs to be tarred with this when only like one of them ran on it, Cori Bush, and she won, by the way, in her particular district. It may have made sense to run on that. But like, the media is just going to bash over the head the left with this idea. You guys are unpopular. Look at this thing, defund the police. What they're not going to point out is on virtually every other topic, we are phenomenally popular in the messaging and with the slogans. Whether it's Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage, living wage, like union stuff with the PRO Act, free college, universal pre-K, like all these left ideas, popular. Then there's like 1 out of 30 that's not popular at all. And the media seizes on that one and blames all Democratic election losses on that issue when only like one Democrat even ran on that. So my point is here, I get why the left is like hypersensitive to these conversations around defund the police. I get it because it seems like it's the unfair scapegoat for all Democratic losses, and it's just a way to conveniently blame the left, which they always fucking blame the left. So I'm with the left on that, of course. But at the same time, I also think it's inescapable that defund the police is not fucking popular. It's never going to be popular. It's not going to help your cause. And if you want to hold on to it like a toddler holding onto their blankie at night, that's, I think, kind of sad. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.